We got some OTAs. We're going to look at those changes. We're going to look at a deck that I think could be really fun with these changes. What from these OTAs are you most excited about? Is anything going to change as far as your gameplay? Let me know in the comments below. So high level, these are the OTA changes. We got Hawkeye, we got Hulkbuster, Vision, Captain Marvel, and Absorbing Man. All of them, in my opinion, seem to be buffs. The only one that you might argue maybe is Captain Marvel, but you get a reduced cost. So like typically that's a buff, even though it loses 1 power. So let's go through each one of these. First up, we've got Hawkeye. I've been calling for this one for a little while. It's a small change, but on reveal, it gives an additional power if you play a card there next turn. It's like a mini rescue. So instead of +2 power, now you're going to get +3. Next up, we've got the Hulkbuster change. And it's a simple change. It's just 1 more power. So instead of 3/4, you get a 3/5. I think you still use this card where you traditionally see it with your Deadpools, your multiple mans, etc. I still like it. Is it going to make a real big change for me as far as where I'm playing it? Not necessarily, but if you've got certain decks, it just makes those decks a little bit stronger, and I like that. Next, we've got Vision bumping from a 5/7 to a 5/8. I think this card is still just as good as it was before. Am I going to use this in a lot of other decks? No, but it makes certain lockjaw decks a little bit better. Maybe you might consider it a little bit more in a deck from before, but it still gets hard to play or move around on turn 6. It's always good with Angela as well. The biggest change, in my opinion, is probably the Captain Marvel one, where it gets a reduced cost to 4 and a reduced power to 5. So this might be interesting to use a little bit. I like it quite a bit. The deck that I'm going to play with is going to incorporate this and 1 more card in it. I like that 4 cost, and I'll give you 1 guess as why. Last up is Absorbing Man, another 4 cost, and is jumping his power up from 3 to 5. I think this is definitely a necessary change. I think this is going to potentially make him all over the place now. An on reveal copy is pretty sick. I mean, you could put an on reveal if it gets Cosmoed. It's like, well, I'm now doing this on reveal somewhere else. This is another card that I'm going to add to the deck we're going to check out. So overall, again, a lot of buffs here. I'm a big fan. I'm curious to see how these all play out. I don't think they're necessarily meta breaking. Maybe Absorbing Man makes certain things happen, which leads us into the deck we're going to look at. And before we get to the specific deck, Absorbing Man again, Alioth. Holy Alioth, because now if Alioth stays as is, where on reveal destroys all enemy cards played here this turn, Alioth 5, Absorbing Man 6. Now, I was talking to Glazer a little bit, and he brought up the point that I think it was Shadow King got data mined as something different and got changed. That might happen with Alioth too, though I think this with Alioth is pretty thematic and it makes sense. Now, could Alioth become like a 5/3 or something, or 5/4? Maybe, I guess, but then it might not be as exciting a card, so we'll see. Okay, so here's the deck. Now, again, I was talking to Corrales a little bit about this too. Brought up, you know, just the whole sort of Darkhawk type thing, which is exactly sort of what I was thinking with Zabu. A lot of people playing Darkhawk. Absorbing Man for Rock Slide, for Iron Lad, for Shang-Chi, or even Korg. It's kind of like, or Spider-Ham. Like, it's in general a pretty good situation. Now remember, Captain Marvel now is going to be 4 cost here. So I've got a Zabu for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards. Now, can you play all of those? No. And do you need your Zabu? Is it heavy into it? Yeah, it kind of is, but you've got your Lizard, which is a solid card. You've got your Jeff, which is a solid card, and your Spider-Ham, which is a pretty good card. So you've got a lot of flexibility here. You could certainly sub some things out. Maybe you take out your Spider-Ham, maybe you put in Enchantress, or maybe you take out Iron Lad and you put Enchantress. But I like Iron Lad similar for the reasons that I liked Absorbing Man. Now, you do got to be careful, though. If you pull your Absorbing Man and your card just before that was not an on-reveal, well, then your Iron Lad is just a 4/6. So that one you might be willing to take out a little bit. Maybe you put in Mystique. If you want to mesh in with a Darkhawk and Devil Dino type mesh, you could always go that route. But this is where I'm going to start. I really like this situation. It's a deck that you see pretty often, and especially recently. Legion is a powerhouse, even outside of Storm, just controlling locations. He's one of the most fun cards in the game. Now it can cost you, but I really, really like that card. And then Captain Marvel, again, can give you some flexibility to move around. Hey, you know what else is a 4 cost? Shuri. So maybe you put Shuri into a deck like this and drop something like Iron Lad. Maybe that's what you want. Or you want to keep Iron Lad and you get your Shuri and you double up Shuri, which isn't really worth it. But the point is you've got some flexibility. I wanted to do one more deck from the Snap Zone tool builder, which I'll mention here in a little bit. But this one, I wanted to lean into a Shuri Taskmaster move situation. I also threw in Jean. I'm not 100% sure I love that, but the idea here is you've got several cards you could lay down early with a Nebula and a Sunspot, potentially at different lanes. Then you throw down a Jean Grey, and you could actually get to your Shuri and either your Vision and or your Captain Marvel and still Taskmaster that same lane and not worry about that card needing to move. You can move it. So even if you Jean lock yourself, if you're copying from Vision and or Captain Marvel, one of those cards you can, or both of them, either one, you can move those to a different location. Obviously, Captain Marvel will move on her own, but Vision in itself, you just put him down after you Shuri, you move him wherever you want him to go, then you lay your Taskmaster on that same Jean Grey spot. And that's why a card like Titania is in here. You could play Titania in a different spot too. You do got to be a little careful with Titanias, because if you have priority and you go and then your opponent goes and brings a Titania to them, that is a little risky. So make sure that you think about that. But you could think about another decent one card. There's not a lot of high ones out there, but maybe you take out Zabu out of this, you put in Angela and you add Kitty instead of Titania. And that could be your one cost card on turn 6 with Taskmaster. So now Kitty's not really the one you're looking to double up with Shuri as much as she used to be, and then Taskmaster in, but that's another decent option. Shoot, you could even Taskmaster the Titania if you want, but again, that's insanely risky. I would not necessarily recommend that. But I did want to put another sort of deck in there that was like maybe a little bit different, something to think about. So I like to see, is there any misses that they maybe should have nerfed something? So right now we're just looking at cards for the last 30 days, win percentages, stuff like that. Abomination, Sauron, Thing, Patriot, all pretty high win percentages. From Falcon up, it's all 60% plus, but again, that's the last 30 days. Let's change that to last 7 days, and we've got nothing above 60%. We've got 56s, 57s, and that to me is pretty reasonable. And this is when drawn. Ultron, Groot, Groot, wow, that's a high one. That's pretty shocking. Abomination, Sauron, Patriot, Misty Knight, Black Bolt. I mentioned that in my free Series 3 guide that I thought Black Bolt might be coming around a little bit, so keep an eye out for that. I mean, you could put your Black Bolt and your Stature in this deck as well that I mentioned earlier. Maybe you drop a couple different cards. Wasp is still really high. That's pretty surprising too. Cyclops, Enchantress, Rock Slide. I think he's gonna jump up a bunch here shortly. Korg. Now let's look at average cubes. Ultron, Groot, Patriot, Scarlet Witch, Khazar, Nightcrawler, Silver Surfer, Blue Marvel, Mysterio. So I don't think anything on the, when I look at these, none of these cards jump out as me as like, these need to be nerfed. None of them do. Which again, a shout out to Second Dinner, Glenn and the team. I really think they are knocking these OTAs out of the park. Straight up, I think they're fantastic. It's one of the best aspects of Marvel Snap. They keep the meta fresh. They change things. I haven't seen anything that I'm just like, wow, that is way, way off base right now. Looking at win played, Hela, of course. Galactus, a high win percentage when played. That's interesting. Silver Surfer, Ultron, Infinite, Groot. None of these hit Monkey still has a pretty good win percentage when played, so that change was good. Spectrum, Jane Foster. I think that Spectrum buff that I've been asking for on the OTAs is going to come when the Marvels movie's out, which I think is November, so I keep an eye out for that. Again, average cubes, Hela is the queen of this. She always will be. It's just hard to get when played. I mean, you can see that even when she's in deck, win percentage in deck is only 47%, so it's a high risk, high reward situation. But again, as I look at these, I don't think any of these need, even Galactus, you know, I did that BMing video the other day. I don't think he needs to be nerfed. I think he's fine right now. Living Tribunal, I'm glad he's being improved. Part of me wonders about maybe a 6/8 so he's not shangable and then just make sure it rounds up. But that's a patch thing. Again, I'm pretty happy here. I think that, let's look at the bottom to see if they missed anything. I guess maybe Crossbones. Hawkeye, they just changed. Angel is one that we need to talk about. We've been talking about Baron Mordo. Howard the Duck definitely needs some love. I don't know what it is, but needs something. Valkyrie, sad to see. Rhino's I'm surprised he's pretty that low. I mean, he's a pretty good card. Silk, that's sad. I mean, but I'm not surprised. She is very RNG with where she lands. And then we've got Adam Warlock, who I've mentioned in the past. Quicksilver here, but I don't think they're ever going to touch that, and I'm good with that. Absorbing Man, we just talked about it. He's obviously there. Sentry's one to keep an eye out for in the future. Leader's still pretty low, which honestly, I'm a bit surprised by that. The nerf obviously hurt him, but I think the change, it seems like a decent play. You Sandman into Leader, that's still a decent play. And I'm also surprised Dagger is so low. Kingpin, that sort of makes sense. Not a lot of play with him. Captain Marvel, we talked about her. She's obviously getting changed. We'll see how that changes. Mantis, etc. So anyway, I'm going to stop looking at that. Again, this is the deck I'm looking at. I used the Marvel Snap Zone deck builder to look at this and think about what I wanted to build. build. This makes the most sense to me to start. I highly recommend this tool anytime you're trying to theory craft a deck. You can go in there and look for any cards you might want to use. I've been talking about Alioth a bunch. He's in there, so you can go and theory craft a deck with Alioth. It's a legit fantastic tool. So again, apologies for any of the less edited videos. I'm dealing with that poison ivy bout I mentioned, and it is killing me. I got some steroids, so I'm gonna rage on ya. Not really, but I am feeling a little, steroided up. So hopefully that goes away quickly. Appreciate you guys making it this far. If you want to hammer down that like button to further support the channel, always appreciate it. I've mentioned before the Amazon affiliate link below, so anytime you're buying anything on Amazon, or if you want to join on YouTube to help financially support the channel, I always appreciate that. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day.